The moment Isla Merrick saw the orc woman painting him into the background of the autumn harvest mural, half hidden behind a cartload of wheat sheaves, he stopped walking and stared so long his boots grew roots. He had been in Thornhearth for 3 years, maintaining the stone bridge that crossed the rill and collecting tolls for the regional authority. 3 years of quiet work, of early mornings checking the mortar between stones, of nodding to farmers who crossed with their wagons. 3 years of noticing the green-skinned woman who arrived each spring with her paints and ladders, who worked on the village's great wall murals through summer and into fall, who left before the first snow. 3 years of never speaking more than a careful greeting. And now he stood in the village square, market-day chaos flowing around him like water around a stone, and counted. There, in the midsummer festival mural from 2 years past, a dark-haired man in a brown coat stood at the edge of the dancing circle, hands in his pockets. The coat had those bone buttons. He owned that coat, there. In the spring planting scene, a figure knelt at the far end of a field, inspecting seedlings. The posture was his, the way he hunkered down with his weight on his heels. There. In last year's wedding scene, among the crowd of well-wishers, a man with a serious face and dark hair held a cup of cider. That was his face. He knew his own face. Isla looked up at the wall where she worked now, 20 feet above the ground on her scaffolding, and found her bent over her work with the focus of a jeweler. Priya Grath had never spoken to him beyond pleasantries, had never asked to paint him. Had painted him anyway, again and again, working him into the village's history like a thread through cloth. His heart did something complicated in his chest. "You just going to stand there, Merrick?" Old Tom called from his vegetable stall. "You are blocking traffic." Isla moved. He walked to the base of the scaffolding and looked up. She had not noticed him yet. She worked with her back to the square, adding details to what looked like this year's wheat harvest scene. Her black hair was tied back with a strip of green cloth. She wore a paint-stained tunic that had once been blue. Her arms were bare despite the autumn chill, muscled from years of hauling scaffolding and grinding pigments. "Miss Grath," he said. She startled. Her brush jerked. She twisted on the narrow platform to look down at him, and for just a moment her expression was completely open, completely unguarded. Something like hope and terror mixed together. Then she shut it away. Her face went carefully neutral. "Warden Merrick, do you need the scaffold moved?" "I can shift it away from the corner if it is blocking your route to the bridge." "No." His voice came out rougher than he meant. He cleared his throat. "I need to ask you something." She climbed down. She moved with the easy confidence of someone who had spent half her life on scaffolding, her hands finding rungs without looking. When she reached the ground, she was still taller than most human women, but only by a few inches. She wiped her paint-stained hands on a rag tucked into her belt and waited. Up close, he could see the small tusks that jutted from her lower jaw, the point of her ears, the fine grain of green skin that reminded him of new leaves in spring. She had gray eyes. He had never been close enough to notice that before. "Why am I in your murals?" he asked, her hands stilled on the rag. "You noticed." "I noticed." "How much did you notice?" He gestured at the wall. "All of it. Every year. You have been painting me into scenes since the year I arrived. You never asked permission. You never said a word." She looked at him for a long moment. Then she folded the rag with precise, careful movements and tucked it back into her belt. "The elders stopped asking questions about it 2 years ago. They decided you were simply a good model for a villager. Representative of the community." "That is not an answer." "No," she agreed. "It is not." People were starting to stare. Isla felt the weight of attention the way he always did in crowds, a pressure between his shoulder blades. He looked around the square, then back at Priya. Can we talk somewhere else? She hesitated, then nodded. My workshop. Follow me. She led him through the narrow streets to a building at the edge of the village, a stone structure that might once have been a grain store. Inside it smelled of linseed oil and pigment. Paintings leaned against every wall, sketches covered a long table. Jars of ground color lined shelves like a rainbow imprisoned in glass. Priya closed the door and stood with her back to it. She crossed her arms. I painted you because I wanted to. That is the truth of it. Why? Because you have an interesting face. Because you stand still when you work and I could study you from a distance. Because you fit into scenes well. She paused. Because I am a coward who could paint you but not speak to you. The admission hung in the air between them. Isla took a careful breath. How long? Since the first time I saw you 3 years ago. You were on the bridge, replacing a section of railing. I came to Thornhearth for the spring murals and I saw you working and I thought, she stopped, started again. I thought you were the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. And I went back to my scaffolding and I painted you into the corner of the market scene, so small that no one would notice. Just to have you there, just to keep you. His chest felt tight. You have been in love with me for 3 years. Yes, and you never said anything. She laughed, sharp and bitter. What was I supposed to say? Hello, warden, I am an orc woman who travels from village to village painting walls. I have no home, no family name that matters, nothing but my paints and my skill. You are a respected human man with a steady position and a place in the community. What exactly was I supposed to say that would not sound like madness? You could have said hello, Isla said quietly. You could have asked if I wanted to get a drink at the tavern. You could have done anything except paint me like a ghost into your work and hope I never noticed. I know. Her voice was very small. I know, but I am a coward, as I said. He looked around the workshop. There were sketches of him everywhere, he realized. Quick studies of his hands, his profile, the way he stood. Years of observation distilled into line and shadow. I am not beautiful, he said finally. I am a bridge warden. I spend my days in mud and mortar. I have a crooked nose from where I broke it falling off a roof when I was 15. I am thoroughly ordinary. No, Priya said. You are not. Something in the way she said it made him look at her, really look at her, at the way she held herself like she was braced for a blow, at the paint under her fingernails, at the hope she was trying desperately to hide. Show me, he said. Show you what? All of them. Every time you painted me, I want to see. She stared at him. Why? Because someone has been in love with me for 3 years and I would like to understand what she saw. They walked through the village together. Priya pointed them out one by one. The tiny figure in the first market mural, barely larger than a brushstroke. The more confident figure in the harvest festival 6 months later. The progression through seasons and celebrations, each painting a little bolder, each placement a little more central. Here, she said, stopping in front of the wedding mural. This was Darcy Miller's wedding last summer. You stood right there, exactly like that, with the cider cup. I painted you from memory later because you left before I could sketch you properly. You remember how I stood? I remember everything about you, she said simply. The way you check the bridge mortar with your left hand because you are right-handed and you want your dominant hand free if something shifts. The way you nod to people instead of waving. The way you watch crowds like you are always planning the quickest exit. I have been watching you for 3 years, Isla. I know you. He should have felt exposed, violated maybe. Instead, he felt seen in a way he had not experienced since childhood, since before he learned to make himself small and unremarkable. I do not know you, he said. No, I would like to. She turned to look at him. What? I would like to know you if you are willing to be known. If you are done being a coward. Her eyes went very wide. Isla, have dinner with me, he said. Tonight, At the Crow's Nest. A real dinner where we sit across a table and talk like normal people, not you on scaffolding and me on the ground. Not you loving me in secret and me completely oblivious, just dinner. I do not understand. What is there to misunderstand? I am asking you to dinner. But I am, she gestured at herself. I am orc. You are human. People will talk. People are already talking. You painted me into every major scene in this village's recent history. The elders stopped asking questions, but the gossips never did. Half the village probably thinks we have been having a secret affair for years. Despite everything, she smiled. It transformed her face, made her look younger and less guarded. We have been having the least exciting secret affair in history then. Tragic. We should fix that. The smile faded. You are not angry that I painted you without asking, he considered that. I think I should be. I think there are people who would be. But mostly I am amazed that someone looked at me the way you did and saw something worth painting. He paused. I spent a long time trying to be invisible, after the war, after I left the military. I came here to be a bridge warden because it is a quiet job in a quiet place, and no one asks veterans too many questions if they seem content to fade into the background. You painted me into permanence instead. You made me part of the village story. That is not something to be angry about. You were a soldier for 5 years. I do not talk about it much. That is why you watch for exits. Yes. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I paint murals because I am trying to give villages their own stories. So many border settlements lose their history, their sense of who they are. I paint so they can see themselves, so they can remember. I painted you because you looked like you were part of something, like you belonged. I wanted you to stay. I did stay. Yes, you did. They stood in the square as the market began to close up around them, as merchants packed their unsold goods and farmers loaded their empty carts. The autumn sun slanted golden across the murals, lighting up 3 years of painted history. Dinner, Isla said again. Will you come? Priya smiled. Yes, I will come. The Crow's Nest was crowded that evening, as it was every evening. Isla had chosen a table near the back, away from the main flow of traffic. He had washed and changed into a clean shirt and then felt ridiculous for trying so hard. Then he had decided he did not care about feeling ridiculous. Priya arrived exactly on time, which somehow did not surprise him. She had also changed, trading her paint-stained work clothes for a simple green dress that made her eyes look like smoke. She moved through the crowded tavern with her shoulders squared, ignoring the stares and whispers. He stood when she reached the table. She looked at him standing there, and something soft crossed her face. You do not have to do that, she said. My mother would haunt me if I did not stand for a lady. I am not a lady. I am an orc painter who lives in a renovated grain store. You are a woman joining me for dinner. That makes you a lady as far as my mother's ghost is concerned. They sat. Mary Wickham, the tavern owner, came over with her order slate and her opinion. About time, you two, she said. Whole village has been waiting for this. Isla blinked. Waiting for what? For you to figure out what everyone else already knew. Girl's been painting you into murals for 3 years. You have been watching her paint for 3 years with that sad puppy look. It was getting painful. She tapped her slate. Now what are you eating? They ordered stew and bread. Mary left with a satisfied nod, like she had personally orchestrated their romance. Sad puppy look? Priya asked. I do not have a sad puppy look. Apparently you do. I have a thoughtful look, a contemplative look, not a sad puppy look, she grinned. If you say so. The food came. They ate and talked. Isla learned that Priya had been painting murals since she was 16, that she had learned from her mother who learned from her grandmother, that it was a tradition in her clan. She learned that Isla had grown up on a farm 2 regions south, that he had joined the military when his parents died and left him with nothing, that he had spent 5 years building bridges and fortifications in contested territories, before deciding he wanted to build things without worrying they would be burned down the next week. "So you became a bridge warden," Priya said. "So I became a bridge warden. It is boring work, exactly as boring as I wanted. But you are good at it. I have watched you work. You are meticulous." "How much have you watched me?" he asked, curious rather than accusatory. She had the grace to look embarrassed. "A lot. Too much, probably. In my defense, you work outside and I work outside, and we happen to be outside at the same time. For 3 years. For 3 years," she agreed. "I know your schedule better than my own. I know you check the bridge supports every morning at dawn. I know you take your midday meal on the south bank when the weather is fair. I know you hate winter because ice makes the stones treacherous. That is slightly terrifying. I know. I am sorry. Do not be sorry. I think it might be the most romantic thing anyone has ever done for me, in a deeply strange way." She laughed. It was a good laugh, full and genuine. "Only you would find being secretly observed romantic. You were not observing, you were treasuring. There is a difference." The conversation flowed easier after that. They talked about paint and stonework, about the politics of village commissions, about the way border settlements changed and stayed the same. Isla found himself telling her things he had not told anyone in years, about the way the war had hollowed him out, about how he had chosen bridge work because bridges connected things, made passage possible, and he needed to build something that helped rather than hurt. Priya listened with her full attention, the way she probably looked at a wall before painting it, taking in every detail. When he finished, she said, "You are a good man, Isla Merrick. That is why I painted you, not because of your face, though your face is lovely. Because you are good in a way that matters." He did not know what to say to that, so he reached across the table and took her hand instead. Her palm was rough with calluses, stained with pigment that would never fully wash away. She looked down at their joined hands like he had offered her something precious. They stayed until Mary started pointedly wiping down nearby tables. Then they walked out into the cool autumn night. "Can I walk you back to your workshop?" Isla asked. "You do not have to. I want to." They walked slowly through the empty streets. Thornhearth at night was all silver moonlight and deep shadows. Their footsteps echoed off the cobblestones. At the door to her workshop, Priya turned to face him. "Thank you for dinner. Thank you for 3 years of secret devotion." She smiled. "I am going to finish this year's mural. Then I usually leave before the snow comes. I move south to villages that need winter work." His stomach dropped. He had forgotten that she left. Every year she arrived in spring and left in fall, following the seasons and the commissions. "How long until you leave?" he asked. 3 weeks, maybe 4. "That is not very much time." "No," she agreed. "It is not." They looked at each other. Isla thought about 3 weeks of getting to know her before she disappeared until spring. 3 weeks to build something that would have to survive months of separation. "I want to see you again," he said. "Every day until you leave, if you want that too." "I want that too," she said. "Very much." He kissed her then, carefully, giving her time to pull away. She did not pull away. Instead, she rose on her toes and kissed him back, her paint-stained hands coming up to frame his face. She tasted like the honey cake they had shared for dessert. When they broke apart, she was smiling. "I am going to paint this," she said. "This exact moment. You and me right here." "For which village?" "For me. Not everything has to be a commission." They saw each other every day after that. Isla adjusted his bridge schedule so he could take his midday meal while she worked, sitting on the ground beneath her scaffolding and talking up to her while she painted. She came to the bridge in the evenings and watched him point stones by lamplight. asking questions about mortar and load bearing and the engineering of arches. The village watched with barely concealed delight. People went out of their way to walk past wherever they were, greeting them with knowing smiles. Mary Wickham started setting aside the good table near the window whenever she saw them coming. The elders nodded approval, their earlier questions about the painted figure now answered and resolved. "We are a spectacle," Priya said one afternoon, watching a group of children giggle and run past. "We are a love story," Isla corrected. "People like love stories." "Do we get a happy ending?" "I am working on that part." 2 weeks into their courtship, everything changed. Priya was working on the final section of the harvest mural when a coach arrived in the village square. It was a fine coach, pulled by matched horses, driven by a man in expensive livery. A portly man in merchant silks climbed out and looked around with the expression of someone assessing property value. Isla was sitting against the wall beneath Priya's scaffolding, eating an apple and watching her paint grain sheaves. He saw the man arrive and felt something tighten in his chest. "Priya," he said quietly. She looked down, following his gaze. Her face went still. "That is Theodore Vance. He is a merchant from the capital. Do you know him? He has tried to hire me before. I always refuse." Theodore Vance spotted them. His face lit up with commercial delight. He crossed the square with his hand extended. "Miss Grath, what tremendous luck finding you here. I have been meaning to speak with you." Priya climbed down from the scaffolding slowly, deliberately. She wiped her hands on her rag and did not take his offered hand. "Master Vance, I thought I made my position clear the last 3 times you asked." "Ah, but this is a different offer entirely, much more lucrative." He turned to survey the murals that covered the village walls. His expression shifted from delight to distaste. "These are quite charming in a rustic way, but imagine something grander. Proper classical style, done in fresco by trained artists from the capital. I am prepared to offer Thornhearth's council a very generous sum to commission a complete replacement of these walls." Isla stood up. "Replacement?" Vance looked at him like he was part of the furniture that had unexpectedly spoken. "Yes, replacement. These murals are provincial work, suitable for a border village but not for a community with aspirations. I represent a consortium interested in elevating the cultural standards of frontier settlements. By destroying their history." Priya's voice was very calm, which Isla was learning meant she was furious. "By replacing crude work with sophisticated art. You could be part of the project, Miss Grath. I am prepared to hire you as an assistant to the master painters. Not your usual arrangement, I know, but the compensation would be substantial. You want to whitewash 3 generations of this village story and paint over it with generic classical scenes. I want to give this village something beautiful and lasting. These murals are beautiful and lasting." Vance smiled, indulgent and patronizing. "My dear, you have done admirable work given your limitations, but there is a reason orc painting has never achieved the recognition of human masters. It lacks refinement, sophistication, classical training." Isla saw Priya's hands clench into fists. He stepped forward, putting himself slightly between them. "I think you should leave, Master Vance. And you are the bridge warden, the man who controls access in and out of this village." "The man who is telling you to leave." Vance's expression hardened. "I have an appointment with the village council this evening. They will be very interested in my offer. Then you can come back this evening. For now, you are upsetting the lady." "The lady?" Vance looked at Priya and laughed. "You are courting an orc. My goodness, I suppose that explains the provincial tastes." Isla's hand shot out and gripped Vance's collar before he quite knew what he was doing. His voice came out very quiet and very dangerous. "Get back in your coach. Drive away. Do not come back until this evening." And if you ever speak about her that way again, I will throw you off my bridge personally." Vance went pale. He stumbled backward when Isla released him, straightening his collar with shaking hands. "This is assault. I could have you arrested. You could try. I am a decorated veteran with an honorable discharge and a spotless record. You are a merchant who just insulted a respected craftswoman in front of witnesses. How do you think that goes for you?" Vance looked around the square. A crowd had gathered, drawn by the raised voices. The faces looking back at him were not friendly. He seemed to reassess the situation. "This evening," he said stiffly, "the council will hear my offer." He climbed back into his coach. It pulled away with a clatter of hooves on cobblestones. The moment it was gone, Priya sat down hard on the ground. "He is going to destroy them. The council will take his money and he is going to destroy everything I built here." Isla sat beside her. "We do not know that." "Yes, we do. The village needs money. Border settlements always need money. And he is offering them a fortune to erase me." She looked at the murals stretching across the walls, 3 years of her life rendered in paint and passion. "I painted our story here. I painted you into the memory of this place, and he is going to whitewash it like it never existed." "Then we fight," Isla said. "How? He has wealth and connections and professional artists. I have paint and stubbornness. And me. You have me. And you have 3 years of goodwill from every person in this village. And you have work that matters to people, that means something." He took her hand. "We make them understand what they would be losing. We make them care more about their own story than about his money." She looked at him. "You would do that, fight for my murals." "I would fight for you," he said simply. "The murals are part of you, so yes." The council meeting that evening was held in the village hall, a long stone building that smelled of old wood and older arguments. Every seat was filled. People stood along the walls. The council elders sat at a long table at the front, looking variously interested, skeptical, and uncomfortable. Theodore Vance presented his offer with the smooth confidence of a man who had bought his way through many such meetings. He spoke of cultural elevation, of increasing property values, of putting Thornhearth on the map as a destination for art lovers. He dismissed the current murals as well-intentioned but ultimately amateur work. He offered a sum of money that made people gasp. When he finished, Elder Ruth looked to where Priya sat in the front row. "Miss Grath, you have a right to respond." Priya stood. Isla watched her gather herself, squaring her shoulders the way she did before climbing scaffolding. "Master Vance is right about one thing," she said. "I am not a classically trained artist. I did not study in the capital academies. I learned from my mother, who learned from her grandmother, who learned from the traveling painters before her. What I do is not sophisticated or fashionable." Vance looked smug. "But what I do," Priya continued, "is true. Every face in those murals belongs to someone from this village or someone who passed through. Every scene happened. When you look at those walls, you see your own history looking back. You see Darcy Miller's wedding, and the harvest festival where Thomas broke his arm dancing, and the market day when Sarah's goat ate half the merchant stalls. You see yourselves." She turned to address the room. "Master Vance wants to give you beautiful generic murals painted by skilled strangers. They will be technically perfect. They will also be about nothing and no one. They will be paintings on a wall instead of your story on stone." "And what of the money?" Elder John asked. "We need a new roof on the school. The South Road needs resurfacing. That money would help people now." "Your murals, lovely as they are, do not fix roofs." "No," Priya agreed. "They do not. But they do something else. They tell your children who you were, who you are. They give you permanence. When I am gone, when everyone in this room is gone, those walls will still be here telling your story. That is worth something. Maybe not as much as a new roof, but something. Mary Wickham stood up from the back. I am a third-generation tavern owner. My grandmother is in the market mural from 15 years ago, the one painted by Priya's mother. Every time I pass that wall, I see her face and I remember her voice. You want to whitewash my grandmother for a new school roof? Others stood. Thomas, his arm long-heeled, defending the festival mural. Darcy Miller, talking about her wedding painting and how much it meant to have that day preserved. Farmer after farmer pointing out the harvest scenes, the planting rituals, the small moments of village life captured and kept. Isla stood last. I am not good at public speaking, he said. I am better at bridges, but I want to say something about permanence. I came to Thornhearth to be a bridge warden because I wanted to build something that would last, that would help people cross over difficult places. Priya does the same thing with paint. She builds bridges between your past and your future. She makes it possible to cross over the years and still see who you were. That is worth more than any amount of money Master Vance can offer. He paused. And I want to say something else. 3 years ago, Priya painted me into a corner of a market scene. I did not know her. We had never spoken. But she saw something in me worth preserving, worth making part of this village story. She has been painting me into scenes ever since, and maybe some of you noticed, and maybe some of you wondered why. I am telling you now. She painted me because she loved me before she had the courage to speak to me. She painted me into your history because she wanted me to stay, wanted me to belong. And I did stay, and I do belong because she made it so. The room had gone very quiet. Master Vance can offer you money, Isla said. Priya offers you yourselves. I know which one I choose. He sat down. Priya was staring at him with tears in her eyes. The council conferred quietly among themselves. Then Elder Ruth spoke. We will put it to a village vote. Those in favor of accepting Master Vance's offer stand. 5 people stood. Vance and 4 others, all looking around nervously at the seated majority. Those in favor of preserving the current murals. The rest of the room stood as one. Elder Ruth nodded. The murals stay. Master Vance, we thank you for your offer, but we decline. Vance's face went red. You are making a terrible mistake. This village will never amount to anything if you cling to primitive sentimentality over real culture. Then we will be primitive and sentimental, Elder Ruth said, and our story will be our own. Good evening, Master Vance. He left, sputtering. The moment the door closed behind him, the room erupted in conversation and celebration. People crowded around Priya, thanking her, praising the work she had done. She accepted it with visible amazement, like she had never expected to be valued this way. Isla waited until the crowd thinned. Then he took her hand and led her outside. They walked to the main mural wall, the one that held 3 years of Thornhearth history. The moon was bright enough to see by. Priya ran her hand over a painted figure, her touch gentle. Thank you, she said quietly, for what you said in there. I meant every word. I know, that is what makes it so terrifying. She turned to look at him. You said I loved you before I had courage to speak. You used past tense. Did you mean that? What do you mean? Do I still love you, or is it past tense now that we are actually courting? He understood. Still, present tense, ongoing. Good, because I do still love you, and it terrifies me because I am leaving in 2 weeks and I do not know how to leave you behind. Then do not, Isla said. What? Do not leave, stay. You could make Thornhearth your base. You could travel for commissions and come back. You could have a home. I do not know how to have a home. I have been traveling since I was 16. Learn. I will help you. She shook her head. You are asking me to change my entire life. I am asking you to build a life instead of just moving through one. There is a difference. And what will you change, or is this all on me? It was a fair question. Isla thought about it, really thought. I will learn to paint, he said finally. I will travel with you sometimes, when you have commissions in places that need a bridge warden for a season. I will stop trying to fade into the background and let myself be seen. I will paint with you, even if I am terrible at it, so you are not always working alone. You would do that. For you, yes. She kissed him then, hard and desperate and full of hope. When they broke apart, she was crying. I am so tired of being alone, she said. I have been alone for so long. I want to stay. I want to have a home. I want it to be here with you. Then stay. I will stay. They stood in the moonlight, holding each other, while the murals watched over them like witnesses. The next morning, Priya went to the council with a proposal. She would make Thornhearth her permanent residence, returning each year to maintain and add to the murals. In exchange, the village would provide her workshop rent-free and guarantee her a yearly commission for mural maintenance. She would still take outside work, traveling to other villages for major projects, but she would always come back. The council agreed immediately. Elder Ruth looked like she might cry. We thought you would leave after this year and never return, she said. Having you permanent is more than we hoped for. I am not going anywhere, Priya said, and meant it. She told Isla that afternoon while he worked on the bridge. They agreed. I have a home. I am staying. He set down his trowel and pulled her into his arms, not caring that he was covered in mortar dust. Good, that is good. I am terrified, she admitted. Of what? Of staying in one place, of being known, of having people expect things from me, of all of it. Welcome to how most people live. How do you stand it? You build things that matter and you try not to break them, same as what you have always done, just in one location. She laughed against his chest. You make it sound simple. It is simple. Not easy, but simple. They spent the rest of that day together, planning. Priya would need to send letters to the villages that expected her for winter work, explaining that she was establishing a permanent residence. She would need to organize her workshop properly, set up for year-round use instead of seasonal storage. She would need to figure out how to live in one place after 12 years of constant travel. Isla helped with all of it. He built her new shelving for paint storage. He helped draft the letters. He sat with her when she panicked about the enormity of what she had committed to, and he reminded her that she was choosing this, that she could unchoose it if she needed to, but that he thought she was braver than she believed. 2 weeks after the council meeting, Priya began work on a new mural panel. It was a small section, just 8 feet wide and 10 feet tall, placed at the end of the harvest scene. She worked on it alone, not letting Isla see until it was finished. When she finally called him to look, the whole village came with him. The panel showed 2 figures standing close together, hands joined. A green-skinned orc woman in a paint-stained tunic. A dark-haired human man in a brown coat with bone buttons. Behind them, the wall stretched away in both directions, covered in scenes of village life, of festivals and harvests and ordinary moments made permanent. The 2 figures looked at each other with expressions of quiet joy, like they had found something they had not known they were searching for. At the bottom, in small, careful letters, Priya had written the date in a single line. Some things are worth staying for. The crowd was silent for a long moment. Then Mary Wickham started clapping and everyone joined in. Isla looked at Priya. She was watching him nervously, waiting for his reaction. It is perfect, he said. You do not mind that I painted us together without asking. You painted me for 3 years without asking. I think I can forgive one more, she smiled. I am going to keep painting you, you know. For the rest of my life, probably. You are going to be in every mural I do. Good. Someone should remember that I was here, that we were here together. That night, Isla asked Priya to marry him. They were in her workshop, going through paint supplies and making lists of what she needed to order for winter work. She was cataloging jars of pigment. He was sitting at the table, supposedly helping, actually just watching her work. "Marry me," he said. She nearly dropped the jar of vermilion. "What? Marry me? Stay with me. Paint murals and let me help you grind pigments and mix colors. Teach me how to see the way you see. Let me love you for the rest of our lives. Isla, we have known each other for 5 weeks. I have known you for 3 years. You have known me for 3 years. We just spent most of that time being cowards about it. That is not the same as courting. Is it not? You studied me, you learned me, you loved me before you spoke to me. I think that counts." She set down the vermilion very carefully. "You are serious, completely serious. I want to marry you. I want to build a life with you. I want to wake up every morning knowing you are going to be there, probably already awake and working on some painting because you never sleep enough. I want to grow old with you and have people look at your murals 50 years from now and see us still there, still together." He paused. "I want everything, Priya, if you want it too." "I do," she whispered. "I want it so much it frightens me." "Then say yes." "Yes. Yes, I will marry you." He kissed her then, and she kissed him back, and somewhere in the middle of it, they started laughing because it was absurd and perfect and completely improbable. An orc painter and a human bridge warden, falling in love in a border village, choosing each other despite every reason not to. They married in the spring, as soon as the ground thawed enough to hold the celebration outside. The entire village attended. They held the ceremony in the square, in front of the murals Priya had painted, with her newest panel showing the two of them together. Elder Ruth officiated. Mary Wickham cried through the entire thing. Half the village brought food for the celebration afterward, until the tables groaned under the weight of pies and roasts and fresh bread. Priya wore a dress the color of new leaves and flowers in her black hair. Isla wore his best coat and looked at her like she was the only thing in the world worth seeing. When Elder Ruth asked if he took Priya as his wife, Isla said yes in a voice that carried across the square. When she asked if Priya took Isla as her husband, Priya said yes like a vow and a promise and a beginning all at once. They danced at their own wedding, which neither of them did well, and they did not care. They ate and drank and accepted congratulations from what felt like every person they had ever met. When the sun finally set, and the celebration began to wind down, they walked hand in hand to the workshop that was now their shared home. "We did it," Priya said, looking at the ring on her finger like it was a miracle. "We did. I am terrified. I know, me too, but happy. Mostly happy." "Mostly is good enough," Isla said and kissed his wife. They settled into married life with the awkwardness of two people learning to share space. Priya worked odd hours, seized by creative fits at midnight or dawn. Isla kept regular schedules, trained by years of military discipline. She was messy, leaving paint supplies scattered across every surface. He was compulsively neat, organizing things into systems she immediately disrupted. They learned each other's rhythms. Isla started waking before dawn to grind pigments while Priya slept, leaving them ready for her when inspiration struck. Priya learned to contain her workspace to the studio section of the building, leaving their living quarters clear for Isla's need for order. He learned to sleep through her nocturnal painting sessions. She learned to appreciate his methodical approach to household tasks. Months passed. The village watched their marriage with the same attention they had given the courtship, but the novelty faded into acceptance. Isla and Priya became simply part of Thornhearth's fabric, as permanent as the bridge and the murals. Priya took commissions in neighboring villages, traveling for weeks at a time. Isla went with her sometimes, finding temporary bridge work in the same settlements. Other times he stayed in Thornhearth, maintaining their home and his bridge, and counted the days until she returned. Every time she came back, she painted him. She added him to festival scenes and market days, to quiet moments and grand celebrations. He became a constant presence in her work, a through line in the visual history of half a dozen villages. "You are making me immortal," he told her once, watching her add his figure to a spring planting scene. "I am making you remembered," she corrected. "There is a difference." "Is there? Immortality is being known by strangers. Being remembered is being known by people who love you. I want people who see these murals to know that you were loved." A year after their wedding, Priya missed her monthly time. She told Isla one evening while he cooked dinner, blurting it out before she lost her nerve. "I think I might be pregnant." He set down the wooden spoon very carefully. "You think I am late. I am never late, and I have been sick in the mornings, and my breasts hurt." She was talking too fast, nervous. "It might be nothing, it might be something else, but I think it might be a baby." Isla crossed the kitchen in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms. "A baby, maybe a baby, we should not get excited yet. It might, can I be excited anyway?" She pulled back to look at him. His eyes were bright. "You want this, do you?" "I think so. I am terrified, which seems to be my permanent state these days. But yes, I think I want this." "Then I am excited, terrified also, but excited." They went to see the village healer the next day. Old Margaret examined Priya with practiced efficiency and confirmed what they had suspected. "You are about 6 weeks along. Due in late winter, early spring. Congratulations." Priya sat very still, processing. Isla held her hand and looked like he might vibrate out of his skin with contained joy. "What do I do?" Priya asked. "I do not know anything about babies." "You grow it for 9 months and then push it out," Margaret said with the bluntness of someone who had delivered half the village. "The rest you figure out as you go, same as everyone else." They told the village that evening because trying to keep secrets in Thornhearth was pointless. Mary Wickham immediately started knitting tiny clothes. Elder Ruth began organizing a village pool to bet on the baby's sex and birth date. Farmer Thomas offered them his old cradle, the one that had held 4 generations of his family. Priya was overwhelmed by the attention and the care. She had grown up traveling, never staying anywhere long enough to build this kind of community. Having an entire village invest in her unborn child felt impossible and precious. "Is this normal?" she asked Isla one night, looking at the pile of gifts that had accumulated in their home. Blankets and booties and carved toys, all made by villagers who barely knew them a year ago. For a good village, yes. For Thornhearth, definitely. They love you, both of you now. She started crying, which she had been doing more often lately. Isla held her and let her soak his shirt with tears and hormones. "I am going to be a terrible mother," she said. "No, you are not. I do not know how to stay in one place. How can I raise a child when I do not even know how to have a home? You do have a home. Here. With me. And you are going to be a wonderful mother because you know how to see people, really see them the way you saw me. That is what good mothers do." She wanted to believe him. The pregnancy progressed. Priya's body changed in ways that fascinated and horrified her. She painted through morning sickness and exhaustion, driven by a need to create that felt tied to the creation happening inside her. Her murals from that period had a quality of fierce joy, of life asserting itself against all odds. Isla became even more protective than usual. He fussed over her diet, her rest, her safety on the scaffolding. She tolerated it because she knew it came from love, but she drew the line at him trying to ban her from climbing. "I am pregnant, not broken," she said. "I can still work. You could fall. I have been climbing scaffolding since I was 12. I am not going to fall now." They compromised. She would work on ground-level murals while pregnant, saving the high work for after the baby came. Winter arrived, bringing snow and cold. Priya's belly grew. She painted herself into a winter festival mural, her pregnancy visible and undeniable, Isla beside her with his hand on her round stomach. "Future generations are going to see this and know we had a baby," Isla said, studying the painting. "Good. Let them know. Let them see that we were here, that we made a life, that we brought new life into the world. That is worth recording." The baby came on a cold night in early spring, arriving with spring's first thunderstorm. Priya's labor started just after dinner. The pains came fast and hard, leaving little time for preparation. Isla ran for Margaret while Mary Wickham and Elder Ruth stayed with Priya, helping her through contractions and speaking calm encouragement. Margaret arrived and took charge with the confidence of someone who had done this 100 times. "First babies take their time," she said. "Settle in. This is going to be a while." It was not a while. The baby came fast, tearing into the world with the same fierce energy Priya brought to everything. A boy, red-faced and screaming, with his mother's pointed ears, and his father's dark hair and skin that was somewhere between them. A soft olive green that would darken as he grew. Margaret placed him on Priya's chest. She looked down at her son and made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. Isla was crying openly, not bothering to hide it. "He is perfect. He is ours," Priya said, wonder in her voice. They named him Carden after Isla's father. He was a healthy baby, hungry and loud and utterly demanding. Priya fell in love with him immediately and completely, in a way that terrified her with its intensity. She had not known she could love something this much. Isla took to fatherhood like he took to everything, methodically learning what needed to be learned. He changed diapers and walked the floor at night when Carden would not sleep. He sang off-key lullabies and built a proper crib to replace the borrowed cradle. Priya learned to paint with a baby strapped to her chest, Carden sleeping against her while she worked on ground-level murals. She painted him into village scenes before he was a month old, a tiny green baby in his mother's arms, his father standing close and protective. "You are putting our whole life on these walls," Isla said, watching her add Carden to a spring planting mural. "Yes, is that all right?" "It is more than all right, it is everything." Carden grew. He became a toddler, then a small boy. He learned to walk in the village square, taking his first steps between the murals his mother had painted. He learned his colors by watching her mix paints, his numbers by counting brush strokes. The village raised him alongside his parents. Mary Wickham watched him when Priya and Isla both had work. Farmer Thomas taught him about growing things. Elder Ruth told him stories of the village's history, pointing to the murals to illustrate. When Carden was 3, Priya became pregnant again. Another boy, born in autumn this time. They named him Jasper, and he was quieter than his brother, more contemplative. Where Carden was all energy and noise, Jasper was stillness and observation. "He is going to be an artist," Priya said, watching infant Jasper stare at the play of light through a window. "He is 3 weeks old." "You cannot possibly know that. I know. Look at how he sees things." She was right. As Jasper grew, his way of looking at the world mirrored his mother's, finding beauty and pattern in ordinary things. The boys grew up surrounded by paint and stone, by their mother's art and their father's engineering. Carden learned to mix mortar before he learned to write his name. Jasper could identify pigments by smell at 4 years old. Priya painted them into every mural. Her sons became part of Thornhearth's visual history, growing up on the village walls for everyone to see. The murals tracked their childhood in paint, a record more permanent than memory. Years passed. Isla's bridge stood strong, requiring only minor maintenance. Priya's murals became famous enough that people traveled to see them, art students and historians making pilgrimages to study her work. She was offered commissions in major cities, prestigious work that would have made her wealthy and famous. She turned them all down. Why? Isla asked after she refused a particularly lucrative offer. You could paint in the capital, show your work to thousands. I paint for people who need to see themselves in their own stories, she said. Cities have plenty of artists, border villages have me. That matters more. She did travel for commissions, taking the boys with her when they were young, going alone when they were old enough to stay with Isla. She painted murals in a dozen villages, spreading her vision of community memory across the frontier. But she always came back to Thornhearth, to the home she had built, to the family she had chosen. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Isla woke to find Priya already gone. He found her in the square, standing in front of the mural wall, staring at the panel showing the two of them together from 10 years before. Nostalgia, he asked, joining her. Wonder, look at us, we were so young. We are still young, we are 40, that is not young. It is not old either. He studied the painting, then looked at the real Priya beside him. The years had added lines around her eyes, silver threads in her black hair. She was more beautiful now than she had been at 30, her face carrying the weight of a lived life. You should paint us again. Update the panel. Show us older, show us now. Show what 10 years of marriage looks like. She considered that. I think I will. But not just us. The boys too, all 4 of us together. A family. She painted it that summer, working quickly while inspiration lasted. The new panel showed all of them, a family portrait in mural form. Priya and Isla in the center, older but still clearly themselves. Carden at 12, all gangly limbs and his father's serious expression. Jasper at 9, already showing his mother's artist hands. The whole village came to see the unveiling. Carden complained about being immortalized in paint where everyone could see him. Jasper studied his own painted face with critical interest, pointing out where his mother had captured the light in his eyes. They grow up looking at themselves on walls, Isla said quietly to Priya. They are going to have the most documented childhood in history. Is that bad? No, I think it is wonderful. They will always know they were seen, they were valued, they mattered enough to be remembered. More years passed. Carden grew into a young man and shocked everyone by deciding to join the military like his father. Isla helped him prepare, teaching him everything he knew about staying alive in dangerous places. Take care of him, Priya begged the recruiting officer, a woman who looked taken aback by the intensity of the orc mother's plea. We take care of all our soldiers, madam. Take extra care of this one, please. Carden left for basic training and Priya painted his departure into the village chronicle, unable to keep the grief out of her brushstrokes. For 6 months the house felt too quiet, too empty without Carden's energy filling it. When he came home on leave, he was different. Harder, more serious. But when he saw his mother, he hugged her like he was a child again, and she held on too long and cried into his uniform. Jasper, meanwhile, had begun painting. Not murals like his mother, but smaller works, portraits and landscapes rendered with delicate precision. Priya taught him everything she knew and watched with pride as he developed his own style, his own vision. You are better than I was at your age, she told him when he was 16. You are still better now, he said. Different, not better. You see things I cannot see. I learned from you. You learned from yourself. I just gave you tools. Isla watched his sons become men and felt the complicated mix of pride and loss that all parents feel. His boys were not boys anymore. They were people with their own lives, their own paths. We did well, Priya said one night after Jasper left to study with a master painter in a neighboring region. They are good men. They are. We did well. I still miss them. Me too. They had the house to themselves again for the first time in 18 years. It was strange, being just the two of them, like it had been at the beginning. They relearned each other's rhythms, rediscovered the quiet intimacy of a marriage without the constant demands of children. Priya painted more during this period, producing some of her finest work. Isla took on an apprentice at the bridge, a young woman named Dana who showed real talent for stonework. They grew older together. Gray threaded through Isla's dark hair, then took over completely. Priya's green skin gained new lines and texture, a map of years lived fully. Their bodies slowed, requiring more care and rest, but their love did not slow. If anything, it deepened, became richer with layers of shared history. They knew each other's stories because they had lived them together. They knew each other's bodies because they had explored and cherished them for decades. On their 25th anniversary, the village threw them a celebration. The entire square was filled with tables and food and music. Someone had strung lanterns across the mural walls, lighting up 25 years of painted history. Elder Ruth, now elderly indeed and using a cane, made a speech about love and commitment and the power of choosing someone every day. She pointed to the murals showing Priya and Isla's progression through the years, from that first panel of them standing together to the most recent showing them with silver in their hair. "You let us watch your love grow," Ruth said. "You painted it on our walls for everyone to see. You gave us a story that mattered, that reminded us what is possible. Thank you for that gift," Priya cried, as she always did at public sentiment. Isla held her hand and looked at the walls covered in their painted life. "No regrets?" Priya asked him later, when the celebration had wound down and they walked home through empty streets. "About what? Any of it? Marrying an orc painter, raising half-orc children in a world that is not always kind, staying in a small village instead of going somewhere bigger." He stopped walking and turned to face her. "Listen to me. I have loved you for 28 years, married to you for 25 of them. You gave me a life I did not know I could have. You gave me sons I am proud of. You gave me a home and a purpose and reasons to wake up every morning. The only regret I have is that I did not talk to you sooner, that I wasted even a day not knowing you." "That is my line," she said, half laughing, half crying. "I was the coward who loved you in secret. We were both cowards, and then we were both brave, and look what being brave gave us." They stood in the moonlight in the village square where they had married, surrounded by walls covered in their painted history. 25 years of love rendered in pigment and devotion. "Will you paint me again?" Isla asked. "One more time, just us like the first panel, but now." "I already plan to. Tomorrow, I want to capture exactly this, exactly now." She painted them the next day, working with the efficiency of long practice. The new panel showed them as they were at 55 and 53, still standing close, still holding hands but worn and weathered by time. The love in their painted expressions was quieter now, less desperate, more certain. She added text beneath, the same words as 25 years before. "Some things are worth staying for." The village gathered to see it. Carden had come home on leave, bringing a young woman he introduced as his intended. Jasper arrived from his studies, taller and more confident than when he had left. The family stood together in front of their newest painted memorial. "Your mother has been putting our whole lives on walls for decades," Isla told his sons. "Future generations are going to know exactly who we were." "Is that good or bad?" Carden asked. "Good," Jasper said quietly. "It means we mattered, that we were here and we loved each other and someone thought that was worth remembering." Priya put her arms around both her sons, pulling them close. Isla joined them, and for a moment they were just a family, standing together in painted immortality. Years continued. Carden married his young woman, a human soldier named Marie. They gave Priya and Isla their first grandchild, a girl with her grandmother's pointed ears and green-tinged skin. Priya painted her into the village murals before she was a week old, unable to contain her joy at being a grandmother. Jasper married too, a quiet orc woman named Thura who worked as a scribe. Their children came quickly, 3 and 4 years, filling Priya's life with grandbabies to spoil and paint. The grandchildren grew up with the same painted chronicle their fathers had, their lives documented on village walls for everyone to see. They learned their family history by looking at murals, tracing the progression of their grandparents' love through decades of paint. Priya slowed as she reached her 60s. The scaffolding became harder to climb, the long hours of painting more exhausting. But she did not stop. She could not stop. The murals were too much a part of her, too essential to her understanding of herself. Isla slowed too. His bridge work became supervision more than labor, his apprentice Dana taking on more of the physical demands. He spent more time with Priya, often sitting nearby while she painted, content to be in her presence. "We are getting old," Priya said one afternoon, watching Isla climb slowly up to her platform. "We are allowed to be old. We earned it. I am not ready to stop working." "Then do not stop. Just maybe stop climbing quite so high," she laughed. "You have been telling me that for 40 years. And you have been ignoring me for 40 years. Why stop now?" They were 70 and 68 when Elder Ruth died. The whole village mourned her, the woman who had officiated so many weddings, settled so many disputes, guided Thornhearth through decades of challenges. Priya painted her memorial into the village walls, a grand portrait showing Ruth in her prime, strong and wise and kind. Beneath it, she added Ruth's words from their anniversary. "You gave us a story that mattered." The funeral was huge, people coming from neighboring villages to pay respects. Afterward, sitting in their home with aching feet and heavy hearts, Isla said, "We are going to go too, someday. Everyone does. I know." "What happens to the murals when you are gone? Who maintains them?" "Jasper will," he promised. "He will keep them for as long as he can and teach his children to keep them after. And when there is no one left who remembers us, when we are just painted faces on a wall," Priya thought about that, "then we will be like all the others. The previous generations painted by my mother and grandmother. Strangers look at those murals and see people who loved and lived and mattered, even if they do not know their names. That is enough. To matter enough to be remembered, even by strangers. That is enough." They were both quiet for a while, contemplating mortality and legacy. "I am glad I stayed," Priya said finally. "All those years ago when you asked me to build a life instead of moving through one, I am glad I said yes. I am glad you painted me into your murals before you knew me. You made me belong before I knew I could belong anywhere. That was a gift. Loving you was the easiest thing I ever did. Being brave enough to show it was the hard part. You were brave. You are brave." They sat together in the home they had built, surrounded by 40 years of accumulated life, and held hands like they had in that first painted panel. More years. Isla was 75 when his heart began to fail. It started small, breathlessness after climbing stairs, fatigue that rest did not fix. The village healer said his heart was wearing out, that there was nothing to be done except make him comfortable. Priya took the news with outward calm and inward terror. She had known this would come someday, had understood that their time was finite. But knowing and facing it were different things entirely. Isla accepted his dying with the same methodical approach he brought to everything. He put his affairs in order, made sure Dana could take over the bridge maintenance fully, wrote letters to his sons and grandchildren. "I do not want you to paint my death," he told Priya. "Paint my life, not my ending. I have been painting your life for 45 years. Then you have enough." When I am gone, do not make the murals sad. Keep them about life and love and the good things. Promise me." "I promise." He lasted through the winter, growing weaker but staying present. The whole family came, filling the house with children and grandchildren, with noise and life. Isla sat in his chair by the fire and watched them all with quiet joy. Priya painted while he was dying, unable to stop working even in the face of loss. She painted the family gathered together, multiple generations in one space. She painted Isla surrounded by the people who loved him, by the life he had built. He died on a spring morning when the early flowers were just beginning to bloom. Priya was with him, holding his hand. His last words were, "Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for painting me into something beautiful." Then he was gone. The grief was enormous and crushing. Priya felt hollowed out by it, scraped raw. She had loved him for 45 years, been married to him for 42. Half her life had been spent with this man, and now he was simply gone. The village mourned with her. They held a funeral that was part celebration, remembering Isla's quiet strength and steady presence. They walked past the murals showing his life, decades of painted history, and they remembered. Priya painted his memorial. A single panel showing Isla at his bridge, hands gentle on stone, expression peaceful. She painted him the way he had been at his best, strong and capable and kind. Beneath it, she wrote simply, "He built things that lasted. He loved well. He was loved in return." She stepped back and looked at it and wept. The months after were difficult. Priya had to relearn how to be alone after 4 decades of partnership. The house felt too big, too quiet. She caught herself starting to tell Isla things before remembering he was not there, but she kept painting. She worked through her grief with pigment and brush, pouring her loss into the murals. The work from that period had a quality of aching beauty, love rendered in absence. Her sons visited often, worried about her. Her grandchildren came and filled the house with noise, pulling her out of her grief for hours at a time. The village checked on her, brought her food, sat with her when the loneliness got too heavy. Slowly, carefully, she learned to live without him. Not to forget him, never to forget, but to carry her love for him forward instead of letting it drown her. She painted him less often in the new murals, honoring his request not to make the work about his death. But sometimes, in quiet corners of festival scenes or harvest paintings, a dark-haired figure would appear, watching with gentle eyes. Just a touch, a reminder that he had been there, that he was still part of the story. Priya was 75 when Jasper approached her about a project. "The council wants to commission something special," he said. "A major work celebrating Thornhearth's history. They want you to paint it." "I have been painting Thornhearth's history for 50 years. They want something bigger, a masterwork, pulling together everything you have done." "Your legacy project," she considered that. She was old now, her hands not as steady as they once were, her body requiring more rest. But the idea appealed to her, the thought of one final major work. Where would it go? The new community hall. "They are building it now, and the main wall is being left blank for you. That is a very large wall." "It is. Can you do it?" She thought about all the murals she had painted, all the stories she had told in pigment. She thought about Isla and their sons and their grandchildren. She thought about a lifetime spent making visible the invisible threads that connected people. "Yes," she said, "I can do it." She spent months planning, sketching, preparing. The mural would show Thornhearth's full history from its founding to the present. It would show generations of families, celebrations, and hardships, the everyday moments that made up a community's life, and woven through all of it, a through line of love. Her love, yes, but also everyone else's. The village painted as it truly was, a web of relationships and care. She began work that spring, Jasper assisting her. Her grandson had inherited her skill, and together they made a formidable team. The mural grew slowly, layer upon layer of paint building up into something extraordinary. The village watched it develop with fascination. People came daily to see the progress, finding themselves and their ancestors in the emerging scene. Priya had pulled from 50 years of painted history, incorporating figures and moments from decades of work. And there, woven throughout, was Isla, not dominating the composition but present. A figure in the background of a market scene. A man on a bridge in the distance. Small touches that showed he had been part of everything, that his life had mattered. The work took 2 years. Priya was 77 when she finally climbed down from the scaffolding for the last time and declared it finished. The unveiling was a village event. The new community hall was packed. The council had covered the mural with cloth, planning a dramatic reveal. Priya stood in front of the assembled crowd, her family around her. Carden and Marie with their 3 children. Jasper and Thura with their 4 grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren, a whole sprawling family that had begun with one orc woman painting a stranger into village murals. 52 years ago, Priya said, her voice carrying across the room, I came to Thornhearth for a seasonal commission. I planned to paint some murals and move on the way I always did. And then I saw a man working on a bridge and everything changed. She looked at the covered mural. I painted him before I knew him. I painted him because I loved him before I had the courage to speak to him. The elders stopped asking questions after a while, but I kept painting him, kept putting him into the village story, because I wanted him to belong. I wanted him to stay. He did stay. And so did I. We built a life here, raised a family here, grew old here. We became part of this community and it became part of us. This mural is about that. About how people become woven together, how individual lives create collective stories. It is about memory and love and the importance of being seen. She nodded to Jasper, who pulled the cloth away. The crowd gasped. The mural was magnificent. It covered the entire wall, a vast tapestry of village life spanning generations. Colors flowed into each other, scenes blending and connecting in ways that showed how interconnected everything was, and woven throughout, barely noticeable at first but gaining power as viewers looked closer, was the pattern of one life intertwining with another. Priya's green-skinned figure and Isla's dark-haired form, appearing and reappearing through scenes, always near each other, always together even when painted in separate parts of the composition. In the center of it all, given pride of place, was a single panel showing them as they had been the day they married, young and hopeful, looking at each other like they held the world. This is Thornhearth, Priya said quietly. This is us. This is the story we built together, all of us. This is what it looks like to love and be loved, to matter and be remembered. This is home. The room erupted in applause. People crowded forward to study the details, to find themselves and their families in the sprawling work. Priya watched them discover their own stories painted into the larger narrative, and she felt the satisfaction of work completed. Jasper put his arm around her shoulders. It is your masterpiece, Mother. It is our masterpiece, yours and mine in this whole village. I just put it on the wall. That night, alone in her house, Priya looked at the sketch she had made for the mural's central panel. Isla's young face looked back at her, frozen in a moment of hope and joy. I painted you well, she said to the sketch, to the memory, to the love that had defined half her life. I painted us well. I hope that is enough. I hope you would be proud. She kept painting for 3 more years, smaller works now that her hands shook too much for mural-scale projects. She taught her grandchildren and great-grandchildren, passing on the techniques her mother had taught her. When she finally put down her brushes for the last time, It was with satisfaction rather than regret. She had painted well. She had told true stories. She had made visible the invisible threads that connected people to each other and to their history. Priya died in her sleep at 80, in the home she had shared with Isla, surrounded by sketches and paint and a lifetime of memories. The village mourned her as they had mourned him, with tears and stories and remembrance. They gathered in front of the murals she had painted, decades of work covering their walls, and they remembered. Jasper painted her memorial, working in his mother's style to honor her. He showed her at her scaffolding, brush in hand, creating something beautiful. And beside her, barely visible in the composition but definitely there, a dark-haired figure watched with love. Beneath it he wrote, "She painted what mattered. She made us remember. She taught us how to see." The murals lasted. Generations came and went, but the painted walls remained. Thornhearth protected them fiercely, maintaining them with the same care Priya had shown in creating them. Children grew up with the murals, learned their village history through painted scenes. They saw the green-skinned woman and the dark-haired man appearing through decades of work, and they understood, even if they did not know the names, that this was a love story. That these two people had loved each other, had built a life together, had mattered enough to be remembered. The bridge Isla had maintained stood for over a century before finally being replaced. When they built the new one, they incorporated a stone from the old bridge into the foundation, and they carved his name into it. The community hall with Priya's masterpiece became a landmark, people traveling to see the extraordinary mural showing a village's complete history. Art students studied it, historians cataloged it, but mostly ordinary people came and looked at it and saw themselves reflected in the story. And in every mural, woven through every scene, the same two figures appeared. A woman with paint-stained hands and a man with gentle eyes. Together across time, across painted history, together in the way that mattered. Some things were worth staying for. They had proved that, painted it into permanence, made it true enough to last beyond their own lives. The murals stood as testament. Love had been there. Life had been lived. People had mattered. And that, painted on village walls for everyone to see, was enough.